What's good, YouTube? Or Storm here, coming at you guys another video today. Today I'll be talking about ban list related discussion. It's going to be a little bit longer than, kind of like, I know my videos tend to run about 10 minutes, but because I'm going to be spending a little bit more time kind of talking about these cards in general, and the main thing is this isn't more prediction video. This is kind of similar to be like, okay, what could happen and what will probably happen. So all the way, we'll go talk about the ban list. So we do know that the ban list is no sooner than August, which is right around the corner. However, common sense would say the mega tins are supposed to drop at the end of the month. Then typically, that's when we see a lot of the decks that came in the mega tin and cards that are in the mega tins get hit. Decks like Goki and decks like Trickstar have been around for about a year now, so this is typically when Konami just decides to kind of sweep the next into the next format. They've done this multiple times. We in the list a couple years ago where Construct was banned, where Scout went to 1, and then the list a couple years ago where while Monarchs and Cosmo weren't completely killed, they were definitely put to a point to where other decks could compete. And then we saw last year where Zoo was basically killed, and then they hit Dinos and True Dracos. So typically this list right around this time of year is the one where Konami kind of like sweeps the older decks out so newer stuff can be played. That being said, with looking at the way Yu-Gi-Oh is kind of be going, there isn't really a whole lot of just crazy good stuff coming, and we're at a point where there's a lot more generic things and a lot more like extra linking related shenanigans. So that's the main thing I think that needs to be curbed in general, is the ability for almost every deck to be able to extra link is a bit too much. So start us off, this is going to be the very obvious one, which is Firewall Dragon. This card has been a problem since release. Now, if you don't believe me, there was an FTK hand loop that used multiple Firewall Dragons that topped a regional before Lithosagam and Grand Salil were put on the ban list. If you're unfamiliar with how the loop worked, it was like a 2-card combo, and because you're playing dinosaurs, it was much like Pendulum FTK, to where it was super consistent in that even if you stop the FTK quote portion of the deck can still do dinosaur things. It would make Emblathanier, which is that rank 9 that banishes without targeting a bunch of different things. It would loop that thing over and over and over again, and it was more than capable of looping out not just your hand, but your entire deck. Firewall has been a problem since day one, since the card release. This is just an example. Then we had Spiral, and it being limited really doesn't feel like it really matters, because yeah, you don't have ability to keep looping firewalls by bouncing, but that literally doesn't matter anymore, because now just one firewall enables constant summoning from hand. And I understand there is the argument out there that Konami won't be hit because it's the anime card. That is bad reasoning. Number one, we do not have an English dub release of Reigns yet, to my knowledge, and so banning Firewall has next to no effects on kids who are buying into the game. And you can't even if it really wanted to just get errata it, or it's perfectly reasonable for them to just write it out. And on top of that, Firewall Dragon has been summoned anywhere from 2 to 3 times over 60 episodes. It's definitely not, quote, the ace monster status. Heck, one of the times it was summoned, it was then used immediately as link material. It kind of gives you an idea, like, whether it's that the writers are intentionally, not putting Firewall in because it might be banned, it remains to be seen. But nevertheless, it is a problem. Regardless, anime or no anime, it is a problem. It needs to be banned. I think that this is one of the situations where almost every Yu-Gi-Oh player agrees that the card needs to go. It's just really a matter of whether Konami will do so. And could it possibly never be banned? It's not out of the realm of possibility, because it is not banned in the OCG either. But nevertheless, it needs to go. Its time has come, and it being banned, I think, will do a really good job at curbing a lot of these crazy extra link combos, because some of these link decks don't really, quote-unquote, need it, but it's just kind of like, and it just happens to be that card that just allows them to expand and go even further. Definitely a card that needs to just go, and I think we can all, watching this, can agree on this. Then the other card, kind of more generic card, is Scapegoat. Scapegoat is, especially if what I think is going to happen, where the game is going to go from slow down on speed, a card like Scapegoat only gets better, because while it is not playable in every deck, especially combo heavy link decks, in slower decks like Trickstar and Paleo and all these other decks, it just is that much better. It makes these decks much better, and I feel like That's when it's a bit much when on top of all the things, Trickstar Sky Striker can set, like Widow Anchor and all these other things, they can also have a scapegoat that's basically a win button. When a card is so good that it becomes a win button, it's definitely something the ban list needs to address. I believe at the OCG it's at 2, but here I feel like, I would prefer to see it banned, but if it went to 1, it'd be a little bit less consistent. It'd be a little, quote-unquote, sacky, but at the same time, I feel like Scapegoat's a card where it's only going to get better as we get more Link monsters, and especially if we do get to a point where the format slows down, that'll mean that Scapegoat will get better, and it'll be a problem. So putting it to 1, I feel like is kind of like the proper place. It just remains to be seen, and it's a card that's kind of been hanging around for a while. And especially in our format where we don't have things like Harpy's Feather Duster, like the OCG has, it's definitely a lot less, it's a lot more potent because while we do have plenty of removal cards, it's not the easiest thing to stop in a lot of cases. So while Scapegoat isn't the best card, it can be a bit slow. It's a card that, is quickly becoming a win button. So I think this might be the time Konami just decides to put it to 1, and it might just sit there. Another card I feel like we could see kind of like slowly urge down is actually Terraforming. Terraforming is a card I've been an advocate of keeping it at 3 for a while now, but there's no doubt that in a format where you have a deck like Sky Strikers, that Terraforming is a lot more. It's basically like an Upstart Goblin for a lot of different decks. Now, hitting Terraforming basically also hurts a lot of future card designs, so maybe the reason why it sticks around a little longer, but we could see it go to 2 and then maybe go to 1, much like the OCG pretty soon. But honestly, I don't feel like Terraforming is a problem. I just feel like it's just the need to mention it because, there's no doubt that card enables Trickstar Sky Strikers to be as good as they are, because you're getting a spell engrave for your engages, and you're getting a field spell that searches you another card. And Terraforming will basically be a staple in a lot of those decks simply because you can search out a lot of these field spells. Konami tends to forget that once per turn button like they did on a card like Light Stage. It's something that we could see. I don't know if we'll see it yet, but something to see. Then another thing I want to talk about is a little bit of hand traps. Now, one thing I'm seeing a lot of is that it's definitely, a lot of people just aren't a huge fan of hand traps. And with Max C gone, most of the hand traps we have are basically no cards. Cards like Ash Blossom, cards like Ghost Reaper, cards like Droll Knockbird. Is it possible that Konami could also start hitting those hand traps? Yes, but I think one thing we've seen about Ash Blossom is that the card kind of will be good, and it will kind of, even though it stops so many things, it's not necessarily always going to be good at against whatever the best deck is. Goki being a prime example, tends to, in my experience against Goki, Effect Veiler, and Droll Knockbird seem to be a lot more effective against them. So, is it possible that we could see Droll Knockbird possibly go to 1 and get banned? Yes, because it's much like Max C. It's one of those things to where it basically ends entire turns, and it's definitely something I could see hitting, especially with the Droll Reincarnation combo. But it does remain to be seen. But I do think the hand traps are somewhat fine, but it's definitely not it's not an ideal world where you basically have to open 1 or lose. But if the format slows down, I don't think they'll be as much of a problem. Now, the next deck we're going to talk about is Sky Strikers. So Sky Strikers are pretty new. In my experience playing against the deck, however, one thing I will say, the pure build is not very good without Needle Fiber. If you're playing any other deck in the format, pure Sky Strikers, the only thing that really is hard to get over for them is when they get Diablos out. And the deck has grinding, but it's not really super spectacular. Don't get me wrong, the stuff they can set is Widow Anchor is an incredibly powerful card. They have a monster. They have some other powerful cards that can reborn stuff from your grave. When they get going, pure can be incredibly good. But the issue is that the deck just cannot put damage online, even to an extent that Zoo could, at least in my experience. Without Needle Fiber, the deck cannot put game-ending damage on board, and it's only a matter of time for playing anything else, whether it's Goki, whether it's Pendulum, for you just to snowball and OTK them. So, do they hit Sky Strikers? Probably not. I don't think. But if they really do want to curb the deck a little, curb the engine, I think we could see Hornet Drones definitely go to 1. If you look at it, this is a very Konami thing to do, where they print things in lower rarity and then hit them later. This is what they did with things like Monkey Board, Joker. They originally were both Monkey Board was a common, I believe, in Bosch, and it was later rarity bumps. But the point is that they put drones as super for a reason, because they know that Engage is the card that sells the set. So It's very possible if Konami wants you to actually play Sky Strikers and not play them as an engine, that we see Hornet drones go from 3 to 1. And it wouldn't shock me at all. I think if they do touch Sky Strikers at all in these next couple lists, I think drones is going to be the card to go, simply because it discourages you from buying engages, because you can, well, any deck can basically just pop in three Hornet drones and get link plays off, and that's not something I think Konami really wants. They want you to get engages, so limiting Hornet drones is definitely something I could see happening. I don't really think Sky Strikers as a deck is really that powerful right now, but it's definitely something that we could see go. Now, as far as Trickstar, so we did mention Droll earlier, but two cards I think really stand out to me for Trickstar, and it is definitely Candina and Reincarnation. Both, I could definitely see Reincarnation is a card that never should have been made, but I could see it Konami just putting it to 1. But Candina is the card that enables a lot of that deck. So as good as cards like Light Stage, as good as cards like Lycanroc can be, Candina, searching all of them, is one of the most powerful things about the deck. So I do think it's very possible that if they really just want Trickstars just to permanently go away or force you to play them differently, we could see Candina go from 3 to 1. What it would do is it would hinder the consistency a lot. If you stop that one Candina, it'd make the deck a lot more less consistent. It'd make the way people play it now even more compact, which is not ideal at all. And it would force players to actually play the deck differently, which I think is something Konami wants people to do. They want people to actually use the Trickstar Link monsters. So it's definitely something I could see happening, that they just limit Candina and Reincarnation, because I think as good as Light Stages is just a dumb, absurd card, I feel like Candina is what enables a lot of the nonsense, and I feel like the deck can still thrive because Light Stage is a card. It would just force players to play more other cards, which I think is the intention of Konami. They want you to play the deck differently. They want you to play those Link monsters. So I think it's very possible we could see both Candina and Reincarnation go to 1. But I do if they really just want to murder the deck, or if they just want to kind of curb it a little bit, Reincarnation could go to 1 as well. It really just depends how Konami feels about the deck. But nevertheless, the whole Droll Reincarnation combo is something I don't think they're fans of. So definitely think we're going to see that addressed in some way. Then for Goki, so Goki is kind of an interesting case, because the Goki's monsters themselves, there's really nothing you can really touch with the Goki monsters themselves. I feel like where the power from the deck comes is the fact that the Nightmares give the deck something to do with all their floating. So I feel like if with Goki, first off, I do not think Isolde is going to get banned, because Konami wants you to buy Noble Knight stuff. And I feel like if Konami wants to promote Noble Knights, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to ban Isolde. If anything, Isolde will go to 1, which I think will be a good spot for it, because it'll mean that one Isolde has to go off, and if it doesn't, you have to have some kind of recursion card in your grave to keep going after linking it off. It basically means you have to resolve it. A lot of times, most of the reason people play 2 is simply, it's much like Electromite. You play multiples in case the first one gets stopped. You make the second one to keep going off. I feel like the same way could be said for Isolde. So hitting it to 1, I don't think will totally do the job. As far as other hits, there's no doubt that I actually wouldn't be shocked to see Invoker maybe finally get the axe. Invoker has been a card that I feel like Konami kind of danced around hitting when they wanted to promote the Predaplants, when they wanted to promote other things. I feel like Invoker kind of dodged it, but the fact is Invoker is one of the best combo enablers for Goki. It's not something they do super consistently, but MX Saber Invoker being able to special summon most of your entire Goki lineup straight from the deck and then make an Isolde is pretty nuts. And like I said, it's not the most consistent deck to make, but you do have the Marauding Captains, you do have the Junk Forwards to go into Invoker, and while I don't think it would totally hurt the deck, it's definitely a play that I could see finally go. It really depends on whether Konami wants to push some of these other, wants to still have these other engines be live, whether they want to hit some more generic cards around the edges rather than touch the Gokis themselves. Definitely a card I could see maybe possibly getting the axe, who knows. As far as the other cards, I think one thing I noticed people talking in a Farfa video talking about Nationals, Phoenix Blade is a card that I think is good, but I think the card that really allows Goki to establish their board is Nightmare Goblin. Nightmare Goblin is a card that enables an extra normal summon, protects from targeting. If you were going to get rid of one of the Nightmare monsters, that would be the one. That being said, I do not think that they're going to touch Goblin this early. It's really early for them to be hitting cards, and they want this to still move the set. So And in a vacuum, I don't think Goblin is an enabler for a lot of different decks, so it's possible that they could just leave it where it is. But Phoenix Blade definitely, well, I understand a lot of people would say, well, Aura, you can play tons and tons of different equips, but none of them do what Phoenix Blade does. Phoenix Blade being able to recycle itself to continually be discarded for your nightmare costs and pay themselves is pretty damn powerful, and you really don't want to pitch your Goki monsters for the effect of those nightmare monsters in a lot of cases, because you want them in your hand to special summon off your Firewall Dragon. There's no doubt that Phoenix Blade enables a lot of those plays. Now that being said, will Goki be nearly as much of an issue without Firewall? Possibly, but there's no doubt that Firewall Dragon enables a lot of their plays. But if they really do, it really depends, like I said with Trickstar, whether Konami wants to hinder the deck going forward or just kind of lightly slap it on the wrist. The likely thing to happen, I think, is we could see some of the generic stuff like Blade and Invoker hit, and maybe they touch, and maybe that's it. But there's no doubt the deck is primed to win Worlds. It's top 2. It's won both Nationals, so it's definitely going to be addressed in some form or fashion. It depends on what Konami wants to do. Then the final deck on the list is actually Pendulum. So Pendulum Magicians in particular have been hanging around for quite some time. Pretty much since the Structure deck dropped, while it's had varying levels of effectiveness based on the format. Pendulum Magicians in some form have been good since that Magician Structure deck dropped, several years ago. And it really depends on whether, again, it's one of those things that you really can't say what Konami's going to do, because the deck is a rogue. It's always going to be a good rogue pick, but the fact that it's been hanging around for so long could mean Konami finally decides to hit the axe in the deck to make sure that it doesn't interfere with you buying new things. But again, we really don't see a lot of crazy new archetypes coming, so is it possible that we don't see Pendulum hit? Because at this point, I don't think, if they were going to hit Pendulum, the two cards point to me are Heavy Metal Foes Electromite and Harmonizing Magician. However, with Electromite, I feel like Konami wants to keep the card at 3, because it helps to promote any new Pendulum decks that people want. Electromite helps those decks, and that's the main thing. It's more than likely we will see more Pendulum decks in the future. So that means people will want their Electromites. It means they'll go out and purchase them online, or maybe buy Megatin trying to get them. The point is, Electromite's existence helps Pendulum decks. So if they just want to curb Magicians, it's possible we see Harmonizing Magician either banned or put to 1. Harmonizing Magician is the best monster in Pendulum Magicians currently. There is no doubt. The fact that it is a 1-card enabler for a lot of your plays. There's so many combos I'm doing testing where I don't have Harmonizing. I literally end on like double rank 4, and that's not really ideal when you only play like 2 rank 4s. So is it possible we see Pendulum Magicians addressed to kind of get them out of the way? No, I actually think not. I actually think, while it is my personal bias opinion, I don't think the main reason we saw Pendulum Magicians addressed with like Pen Call going to 1 before was because it kind of interfered with the format, and last time it was just to prevent them being a tier 0 deck. I think at this point Pendulum is very fair in terms of what it does. So but again, we all don't really know what Konami's going to do. Konami, in the end of the day, they want to move product, and that's what matters. So anyways, about comes to the end of the video. I know it's a little bit long for you guys, about almost 20 minutes, but I hope you guys do enjoy. And anyways, let me know what you guys would like to see hit on the ban list, or possibly come off the ban list down in the comment section below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. It's Warstorm, signing out.